で出てるのサムタイム海岸通りを歩きたいドライブだってしてみたい足し線の合わせてほしいのサムタイム君の虜になってしまえばきっとこの夏は充実するのもっともう戻れなくたって忘れないでも気持ちを伝えてしまえばいつかこの夢は覚めてしまうだろうな青い影が揺れるアンチカット君の虜になってしまえばきっとこの夏は充実するのもっともう戻れなくたって忘れないでも気持ちを伝えてしまえばいつかこの夢は覚めてしまうだろうな青い影が揺れるアンチカット君の虜になってしまえばきっとこの夏は充実するのもっともう戻れなくたって忘れないでも気持ちを伝えてしまえばいつかこの夢は覚めてしまうだろうな青い影が揺れるアンチカット何年経っても言えない後悔したって今はないでも言葉はここまで出てるのサムタイム海岸通りを歩きたいドライブだってしてみたい足し線の合わせてほしいのサムタイム君の虜になってしまえばきっとこの夏は充実するのもっともう戻れなくたって忘れないでも気持ちを伝えてしまえばいつかこの夢は覚めてしまうだろうな青い影が揺れるアンチカット君の虜になってしまえばきっとこの夏は充実するのもっともう戻れなくたって忘れないでも気持ちを伝えてしまえばいつかこの夢は覚めてしまうだろうな青い影が揺れるアンチカット
Hi, everybody. We're live. I'm sorry. I'm
Hello.
really freaking tired, guys. If
Mm.
I don't sound very energetic, it's because I'm not. I got a little bit of sleep today, but I didn't go to bed until 10, and then I was sleeping on and off and getting phone calls and getting interrupted. So I haven't had a healthy amount of sleep. I think I got maybe like 4 hours here and there today, and before that, I've been up for almost 48 hours, running on 3 hours of sleep before that. So I'm just,
Jesus.
I'm really freaking tired, dude. I'm really tired. And then I had to check. I had to check and see the stuff that I typed on Discord this weekend, and I realized, oh my god, I messed up. And so, yeah, I gotta fix some things. That's gonna be fun when I've had sleep and I'm fully conscious again, and future me has to deal with this nonsense.
That's
Yay!
future use problems, not current you.
I'm not looking forward to it. That's the thing. I can't talk about it because, frankly, it's not the public's business. And I mean, honestly, it's not the business of anybody on this call except for Moon, because it's about solo leveling stuff. So you're
Hmm.
very much involved. Other than that, but you already know what I did, and I'm gonna try and fix it. Um, yeah. So that being said, we're not gonna do the spin the wheel thing. We're just gonna let people read. They can swap out at the end of each chapter, or if they want to just tag somebody else in because they don't want to keep reading, or if they just want to if they want to do their own round robin style of like, all right, I did this voice, now you go do voice, whatever. They can do it how they want. I'm gonna be in the background, um, just doing stuff. This is the most you're gonna hear from me this show. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Um, we're picking up, I believe, chapter 4 of volume
Mm-hmm.
11.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm here, but I'm not here, so I just needed to confirm that I heard what I heard before when you guys were like, "Hey, where are we at?" And I'm like, "I don't know." But yeah, that's it for me. Y'all have a good one. Have fun.
Okay.
All right, we be taking over from here, chat. There gonna be some new ground rules. No. Which, which is so.
Moon is the
I think.
next in command, so he gets to make the rules.
I think we're fine with just the doing it as we called it in school, popcorn style. So as we get to each chapter, or whoever if whoever is reading is getting tired or sore, wants to pass it on to the next person, go
Hmm.
ahead and start. And we will start in order of how we usually do the readings. So I read last week, so Sonic, you go right ahead and you'll start.
Yep.
Yeah. And then I'll just read until either my cough or something, because I'm still recovering from a cold. So once that starts to kick up a little bit, I'll probably hand
Yeah,
it off to Shem, and also probably have
exactly.
dinner
Okay.
later tonight anyway. So
Okay.
we'll
Just
see
let
how
me know
this
when you
plays
want to
out.
pass it.
Sounds good. I should take a cough drop now. So. One other thing I will do is turn my TV to reading, or not TV monitor. Honestly, I don't know. Turn it to reading mode.
Whatever it's
There
called.
you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's a monitor. It doesn't on Amazon when I bought this. It didn't say specifically either or in the description. I know it could go to 144 hertz, so let that be as it means to anybody in who cares to hear. Anyway,
Hmm.
Chapter 4: A Brother's Feelings. I learned about the situation as I headed to school with Sophie one morning. Lena and Priscilla were waiting outside the gates for me. As soon as they saw us approaching, they ran over and explained that Norn had shut herself in her room the day before and was refusing to come out. I'm going to go take a look, Sophie was off and running towards the girls' dormitory pretty much instantly. On the other hand, I was frozen in place. I should probably have been following my wife, but the news had thrown me into a state of panic. The word shut in had some heavy connotations for me, I guess. Aren't you going to, boss? You're gonna just ignore this? I didn't know what to say. What was I gonna do? What was I supposed to do? My mind was a blank. In my case, it had all been over the minute I locked myself. It all been over the minute I locked myself into my room. I stayed a shut-in for the rest of my life. Why did I never come back out? Because I thought the outside world was a dangerous place, full of people who wanted to do me harm. I thought I'd be bullied again if I went back to school. Yeah. It was the bullying that started it. I knew they'd make me miserable all over again if I ever tried to emerge from my isolation. I had to address the cause of Norn's behavior if I ever wanted it to change. Before I tried to coax her out, I had to figure out the reason she was hiding in her room. A memory from my past flashed through my mind. I was in the cafeteria at my old school, standing patiently in line. But just as it was finally my turn, a bunch of scary-looking punks barged in ahead of me. Full of righteous anger, I stupidly decided to stand up for myself. I lectured them loudly, enough for everyone to hear, even as they sneered at me and told me to fuck off. I could see other students staring to glance over at us. Feeling increasingly proud of myself, I stubbornly pressed the issue, demanding an apology. Instead, they beat me viciously. By the time it was over, I thought they had crippled me for life. That one mistake turned my entire life into a living hell. If there was any chance Norn was going through something similar right now, I needed to help her. I'd beat down the bullies who were harassing her until she felt safe again. Their friends or relatives might come after me later, but I'd deal with them too if I had to. I didn't care if they were rich aristocrats or even royalty. I'd fight them with everything I had. I'd make sure that they lived to regret antagonizing me. There was a possibility Norn had set off the initial conflict, but whatever they were doing to her in response had obviously crossed the line. Norn was my sister. It didn't matter if she hated me and Asha or if she didn't want to live with us. She was still part of my family, and it was the big brother's job to protect his siblings, right? A few minutes later, I was striding down the hall towards the first year's classrooms with Lena and Priscilla following close behind me. I'd considered doing this myself, but I didn't think my face was especially intimidating. At least these two standing next to me, everyone should recognize that I meant business.
Boss? Don't, Lena. Can't you see how mad he is? It's kind of scary.
The two of them seemed a little dubious about this. That was understandable. I was dragging them into a seriously embarrassing situation. But right now, I wasn't about to let my sense of shame stop me. Right now, I was on full helicopter parent mode. Before long, we reached Norn's primary school or classroom. Homeroom was already underway. "Excuse me," I said, throwing open the door and stepping right inside. Mr. Greyrat? We're in the middle of... I'd like a moment of everyone's time, if you don't mind. That's right, Rudius is going full Karen mode. But it won't take long. Shouldering the professor out of the way, I took her place behind the podium. Before getting underway, I looked around the classroom. Everyone was staring up at me in surprise. But somewhere in this crowd, there had to be a bully who was picking on my little sister. Had they punched her, kicked her? Maybe they'd only insulted her for now. Maybe they just made fun of a sad, lonely little girl who was isolated in an unfamiliar city.
As I believe most of you know, one member of this class was absent yesterday. No one had anything to say to that. What you may not be aware is that she's my little sister. That got a reaction. I heard murmurs from all around the classroom. I haven't heard the details from my sister yet, but there aren't many reasons why a kid her age would stop coming to class. I think someone in this room is probably responsible. I scanned the room as I spoke, looking for a reaction. A number of students looked down at their desk when I made eye contact with them. Most of these were tougher looking kids who were already starting to bend the dress code slightly. Did they have a guilty conscience, maybe? Looking more closely, I realized that one of them was like that delinquent I met some time earlier. I couldn't remember his name off the top of my head. Could he have been the one? Slow down. It's too early to start jumping to conclusions. I didn't expect much of those responsible, I said. Maybe they were just playing around or trying to get to know my sister and things took a weird turn. Maybe she provoked them somehow. I was watching every face in the classroom very closely. Who is it? Who's bullying her? Is it that rich brat over there? Or maybe that sullen demon kid? No, it could be as easily be an ordinary girl. The average kids can be the nastiest bullies of all sometimes. I'd very much appreciate it if anyone involved would step up and admit it. I'm not going to yell at you. I just want you to recognize what you did and apologize to my sister. And after that, I'll chop you into mincemeat. Some of the kids in this room were about as young as Norn, but the majority were older. Some were even in their late teens. There were probably at least a few who looked the other way. There was even a chance they'd all been in on it. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. For a few long moments, no one said a word. Everyone just stared at me, their eyes wide in surprise. Finally, one girl in the group hesitantly raised her hand. It took some serious willpower to keep myself from firing off a stone cannon at her. She was beastfolk, maybe 13 years old, who looked a bit like a raccoon dog. She had a round face, timid eyes, and a bob haircut. Not the kind of kid you'd expect to be a bully. Honestly, it was easier to imagine her getting bullied.
I was actually talking to Noin the other day and...
You accidentally said something mean to her? As long as it was just a few nasty words, maybe I'll take it easy on her.
No, it's just,
I heard a
lot of stories about you, Mr. Grey Rat. But Norn's more of an ordinary girl, right? I just pointed out that you're pretty different from each other, and then she got really mad at me.
That didn't make sense. Why would Norn get mad about that? She didn't want to be like me. She didn't even like me. Oh? The professor standing off to the side of the room seemed to have remembered something. I turned my attention to her. At a glance, the woman looked like an ordinary middle-aged magician. It hadn't even occurred to me that that a teacher might be the culprit. But adults can obviously be bullies too. Did something come to mind, miss? Well, I was giving Norn her homework back yesterday and... She couldn't finish all the assignments you dumped on her, so you made her stand naked in the faculty office for an hour? What? No! She didn't do too well on the assignment, so I told her to learn from your example and try a little harder next time. Dots. I thought she was going to cry for a moment, but then she nodded and said she'd do her best. Wait, what? She nearly cried? Oh wait, that reminds me. all of a sudden there are multiple people chiming in chiming in from all around the classroom, and all of them had similar stories to share. After leaving the classroom behind, the three of us headed over to the dining hall. At this time of the day, it was totally deserted. I took a seat at random and plopped forward on onto the table. This one really hurt. Long story short, it all came back to me. Every time Norn had lost her cool, it had all been because someone mentioned my name or comparing her to me. Most of the students in her class had known that we were siblings. That wasn't too strange in and of itself. We had the same parents and we looked alike. But whenever someone mentioned this, Norn reacted badly. She hated being compared to me. But she got just as upset when someone referred to me as the way of complimenting her. Her classmates weren't to blame for any of this. None of them were deliberately trying to upset her. Some of them were even trying to be nice by telling her she's nothing like her scary bully of a brother. The real reason was that nearly everyone in this school knew me. And so, even without really meaning to, they tended to bring me up whenever they were around her. That was always going to be rough for Norn. Back in her old school, she'd be constantly compared to Aisha, and never in a good way. She was the less talented sister, and they rubbed her nose in it every single day. She was finally in a new school, living on her own, without Aisha hanging over her like a shadow. But before she had a chance to catch her breath, everyone started comparing her to me. No matter where she went, she was forced to face the fact that she was the least talented member of her family. That had to be rough in and of itself. And then, just to top it all off, there'd been an incident with the panties. No one had actually been traumatized by that whole mess, fortunately. Ariel did a great job following up with the victims, and by now most of them could look back on it and laugh from the sound of things. Lena hadn't forced the girls to strip against their will, but rather just pestered them to trade their underwear. It seemed someone had seen this happen from a distance and given the student council an
Exaggerated.
exaggerated, I can read, an exaggerated version of events. Still, I can only imagine how Norn had felt when she heard about it. It's hard enough to feel inferior to your brother, but feeling inferior to your total pervert of a brother had to be 10 times worse. What the hell was the matter with me anyway? I jumped to conclusions and barred into her classroom like an idiot. I wasn't a helicopter parent. I was a helicopter dumbass. Sorry about dragging you into that, guys. I mumbled, looking over at my faithful subordinates. I guess I was really being kind of dumb.
That ain't true. It's never stupid to try to help your family. She's right, boss. If the kid strays into that room too long, her brain's gonna melt into mush. Too true, Mew. She might even become as stupid as Lena.
There you go.
Lena. Yeah, she might. Meow.
I couldn't even muster up a smile as Lena and Persina went about their usual comedy routine. I knew how tricky situations like this could be. People don't just go or stop going outside because it's fun, you know? There's always a reason why they can't bring themselves to leave, and dragging them out of their room by force doesn't change that. In fact, it often makes the problem much worse. That said, this wasn't the sort of thing we could just ignore. If Norn stayed in there for too long, she'd end up regretting it, even wasting months or a month or two can have serious consequences. I knew all of this from bitter experience, but it wasn't something you could just explain to a kid who was right there in the middle of it. Eventually, even the stubbornest cases start to wish they could go back and do things differently. But it takes a long time to get to that point. Real regret doesn't hit you until a year or two or even 10 slip by. And by that point, it's too late to undo any of the choices you made. It's part of why so many parents push their kids so hard, I guess. Everyone has regrets. Sometimes you take those regrets out on others. Tell me something, you two. Let's say you're less talented than your siblings, and people won't stop reminding you of that fact. What's the best thing you can do about it? Lena and Priscilla looked at each other and shrugged their shoulders.
I don't know, boss. The two of us are pretty talented, you know? Yep. We're not too shabby at anything.
Wait. I thought you two got shipped out here because you were too dumb and lazy to lead your tribe, right? Like, they wanted to whip you into shape before they gave you any power. Oh, whatever. Their total lack of self-awareness clearly wasn't hurting them. That approach wasn't going to work for Norn, though. She was a sensitive little girl, not a fur-brained narcissist. Oh, I do know someone like that, though, said Lena proudly.
Aunt Ghislaine. She used to be a thug who went round starting fights all the time. But then she started training and ended up becoming a sword king.
Okay. It's not a bad example. Ghislaine was an exceptional case, but there was definitely a chance that Norn had some unexpected talent we hadn't discovered yet. There was no reason for her to compete with me or Aisha at the things that we were good at. If she didn't want to be compared to us, she could just do she could just do something neither of us had ever tried. I wasn't sure exactly what that something could be, but the world was a big place. Surely she could find a field that interested her, outside the realm of magic or swordplay. There was a risk she wouldn't be particularly talented at whatever she decided to do with her life. It had happened to Zenoba, after all. But despite his lack of talent as a artisan, the prince still seemed to be enjoying life. He got to make his own figures, collect them, and appreciate them. That was enough to make him happy, and that was all that really mattered. It wouldn't probably be hard to convince Norn of this, though. None of these arguments would have worked on me back in the day. But how am I supposed to talk to her about all of this?
Don't overthink it, boss. Barge in there and give it to her straight. Yep. Just tell her to get her butt back in class.
They sure made it sound simple, but maybe I was pretending too much, or maybe I was spending too much time trying to think through all these details. No one was only 10 years old after all. Maybe she was just sulking. I mean, this was only her second day in her room, right? It was way too early to even call her a shut-in at this point. Spending a couple days alone when you're feeling down isn't anything that unusual. That said, she was obviously struggling right now. I've been telling myself she probably needed space, but was that actually true? Maybe I was just avoiding the issue. As her big brother, I could have at least tried to actively support Norn and help her adjust. The hands-off approach might be easier, but that didn't mean it wasn't the better choice. It might be a different story if we were talking about a high school-aged kid or even a junior high schooler. but Norn was only 10. Giving her more attention than she wanted was probably the right call. Before I knew it, I settled on a plan of action. All right then, I'll go talk to her.
That's the spirit, boss. Yeah, go give her a little slap upside the head.
Of course, I was the direct cause of Norn's problems, so it seemed very possible that she wouldn't listen to a word I had to say. But I wasn't going to drive myself crazy thinking about that. First things first, I had to go see her and listen to what she had to say. Oh, I'm not sure how I'm going to get to her, though. Norn's room was in the girls' dormitory. I could walk past it safely these days, but that didn't mean they were going to let me wander inside.
You just sneak your way in, obviously. Time for a convert operation. Boss, leave the planning to us.
The covert operation didn't prove too difficult, thankfully. I had lots of friends on the inside. Sylphie and Ariel were in that dorm too. When I explained the situation to the princess, she immediately agreed to help me out. Of course, one second, I'm gonna drink water. Golade, and the other members of her self-defense squad weren't going to be so easily convinced, so this still needed to be a secret visit. Lena, Priscina, and Sylphie would be handling the actual operational support. Sylphie was eager to help, but she seemed a little downcast about the situation. I'm sorry, Rudy. I promised you I'd keep an eye out for Norn, but she doesn't even want to talk to me. It's not your fault, Sylphie. I'm the only one to blame here. I explained what I learned about the situation, including the fact that Norn's depression had a lot to do with me. Sylphie listened quietly, but she ultimately frowned and shook her head. None of that sounds like your fault, Rudy. What? But Maybe I hadn't really done anything that wrong, come to think of it. Not that I handled the situation very well, either. It didn't matter either way. I still needed to fix this. Gotta get some water. Okay.
Yeah, holding up okay?
Not fun.
All right.
We'll go for another one, see. That evening, I waited until dinner time, then headed for the dorm. The majority of the residents were off at the dining hall at the moment. Word had gotten around that Ariel was going to be giving an impromptu speech there, and she always drew a big crowd. That didn't mean the dorms would be totally deserted, though. You couldn't fit the whole student body in the dining hall, even if you tried. Still, I understood that the members of the self-defense squad were being encouraged to attend. Slipped along the side of the building as futilely as possible,
Furtively.
furtively as possible, looking for a specific window. After a few moments, I spotted it. A window with a single flower placed up against the windowsill. I grabbed a small pebble and tossed it at the window. A moment later, it slid open. After that, it was just a matter of lifting myself up off the ground with a spell, earth lance, and clambering inside. I found myself inside a dark room with a straw animal funk. I didn't mind the scent that much. Maybe it was because the beasts in questions were also young women. Animals tend to be more tolerant of the odors emitted by potential mates, right? Thanks for the help.
You bet, boss.
Lena had been waiting in here for me for a while. Her cat-like eyes glinted slightly in the darkness. My eyes were starting to adjust, so I took a look around the place. The layout was perfectly typical. You had your two-tier bunk bed, a couple of desks and chairs, and a shared closet. It was a little hard to tell, but the room looked a bit of a mess.
Don't look around too much, boss. It's embarrassing, you know.
Right. Sorry. I took a few cautious steps forward and groped around, looking for the doorknob. Instead, my hand closed around something oddly soft.
Ooh, that's one of Priscina's bras.
Noted. I wasn't sure what her cup size was, but from the feel of things, it had to be impressive.
Feel free to take one of those home with you, bots.
I don't think you get to decide that. I tossed aside the brassless and with a sigh. Normally I
Brazier.
might have. Oh, brassiere. Oops. I tossed aside the brassiere with a sigh. Normally I might have taken this opportunity to press it into my mouth and take a few deep breaths. God damn it, Rudy. But there was no time to waste at that moment. Lena slipped past me and knocked on her door from the inside. A few seconds later, another knock answered from the outside. Looks like we're good. The two of us swung open the door, and I quickly slid into the laundry cart that was waiting right in front of it, burying underneath a pile of sheets. From the smell alone, I could tell these had to come from Sylvie's bed. There were blankets and shirts in there as well to provide a little more volume, and all of them smelled like her. I couldn't work up the energy to get aroused, though. Norn was the only thing on my mind right now. My little sister was suffering. She was all alone in that room, totally isolated, hiding from the world, and I had to help her. I was her brother, after all. Okay, let's roll. As the car rattled along down the hallway, I turned my thoughts to the problem at hand. If this was just a temper tantrum, that was one thing. But if it was something more serious, would I be of any use here? Until the days my brothers kicked me out into the street, I never imagined to leave my house. If there were any arguments that could have coaxed me out, I didn't know.
We're here, boss.
The cart reached its destination before I could reach any real conclusion. We were outside Norn's room. I pushed open the door as quietly as I could and stepped inside. The room was totally dark, so I paused to light one of the candles in the corner. In its faint light, I could see Norn sitting on her bed, holding her knees to the chest. Her eyes were open, and she was staring right at me. Dots. I approached her slowly and took a seat in the closest chair. What were you supposed to say at times like this, anyway? What would I have wanted someone to say to me? I could remember all the words I rehearsed beforehand evaporated from my mind. I could remember the things I used to hate hearing, at least. Mainly the cheap cliches. If nothing else, I wasn't going to fall into the my way or the highway pattern. No, you're going back to school right now. No, I'm paying your tuition for a reason, young lady, and no, stop making such a nuisance of yourself. Lines like that only backfired on me. Maybe Lena and Priscina were right. In a sense, a slap upside the head might be the simplest. Norn was only 10 years old, so it might be enough to make her do what I wanted. But that would be the opposite for a long-term solution. Another crisis would pop up soon enough, and she'd grow steadily more defiant. And apart from anything else, it was my fault she was hiding in here. What right did I have to lecture her, let alone hit her? If anything, I owed her an apology. Not that saying sorry was going to change anything. The rumors about me weren't just going to go away, and Norn was going to keep getting compared to me. Norn,
Rudius?
we both spoke up at the exact same time. I cut myself off mid-sentence so Norn could continue, but she'd fallen silent as well. It was a crappy feeling. I sort of felt like I'd missed my only chance. I had to believe that it wasn't really the case, though. and so I forced myself to start the conversation. I'm so sorry, Norn. It hasn't been easy for you here, has it? I paused for a moment, but she didn't say anything in response. You finally get into a new school, but now everyone's pestering you about me. I'm not even sure what to say, honestly, I continued. Norn didn't respond. I guess I don't even understand you that well. Still no response. And despite all the thinking I'd done on my way over here, I found myself at a loss for words. I didn't know anything about her. I kept my distance from her, telling myself not to pry. I haven't even tried to get to know her. I know this must be hard for you, but I'm not sure what to do. I tried again. Norn was still silent. I couldn't begin to tell what she was thinking. I didn't even know if she was listening to me. Was this a lost cause after all? Should I just go back and wait for Paul to get here? Maybe I should step back and seek help from the people I knew. Maybe Nanahoshi could offer some insight on what a younger girl might be thinking. Maybe Alina Lees could figure out some clever way to coax her out. There was no reason I had to try to solve this by myself, right? Oh. Suddenly I found myself remembering something I hadn't thought about in a long time. When I first shut myself away from the world, one of my brothers used to come see me in my room. He'd always look me right in the eye and hit me with all sort of reasonable sounding arguments. Life always has its ups and downs, you know? But there are people out there who had it worse than you, or have it worse than you. Things might be tough right now, but if you just run away from all your problems, you'll keep running forever. That's much worse in the long run. You don't have to go back to school right away. But why don't you at least come out and have lunch with me? In my mind, I answered those words by spitting in his face. In reality, I ignored him. Even so, he would stay in there for some time after delivering his speeches. He'd watch me closely, looking as if he had something more to say, but I kept on ignoring him, confident that he couldn't possibly understand my feelings. Maybe this was how he felt back then. We used to sit up, but we used to sit like that for hours sometimes in total silence before he'd finally get up and leave. After a while, he stopped coming. I can only guess what he was thinking. Although he didn't show up anymore, a bunch of other people tried to visit or started to visit me instead. Maybe he'd arranged that. In the end, I paid no mind to anything those people said either. This might just be a crucial turning point. If I backed off now, I had a terrible feeling that Norn might stay this way forever. I couldn't just turn and run. Not this time. For a long moment, I studied my sister quietly in the darkness.
All right, Shim. Shim?
Yeah, here. I was.
There he is.
Yeah. my
Okay,
bad.
I was what? Did I lull him to sleep? That seems
No.
weird.
I'm here.
Alright.
Oh, okay. Chapter 5 Norn Greyrat. I'm not sure what I started to be afraid of my brother, but oh, this is supposed to be her. Okay. I'm not sure when I started to be afraid of my brother. But it wasn't that way from the start. The first time I met Rudius was the day he punched my dad in the face. I love my dad. He had some huge flaws, but I knew he cared about me very much, and he always put me first. More importantly, I was less than 5 years old at the time. Most kids love their parents unconditionally at that age. I adored my dad, and Rudius showed up out of nowhere and started hitting him. I didn't really understand the conversation that led up to it. At this point, years after the fact, I can recognize that my dad actually provoked the fight. Rudius had just completed a long, difficult journey through a dangerous country, and Dad mocked him harshly. But at the time, all I saw was my brother sitting on top of my dad and punching repeatedly, and all I could think was, he's going to kill him. was the only thing that it was the only thing that mattered to me in that moment. Hold on a second. Naturally, I wasn't about to accept that a monster like that was part of my family. I wasn't scared of Rudius back then. I just hated him. I kept hating him for a long time after that. It didn't help that everyone felt the need to compliment him. It wasn't just my father. When I met my sister and the family maid later, they also talked about him in glowing tones. But the more they praised him, the more stubbornly I despised him. I hated my sister almost as much as I hated Rudius. At the school we went to together, Aisha insisted on constantly competing with me. She challenged me in the classroom and on the field we used to exercise, and she always beat me soundly, cheer on my nose to my failures. With her around, I spent every single day feeling like a loser. I could ever be friends with her. My grandmother was aware of this state of affairs, and she didn't like it one bit. She had nothing but contempt for Aisha, who she called illegitimate, but she also had hopes of me, or at least high expectations. She said I was a lady of the Latria family. Apparently, that meant I needed to be competent at the very least. I was forced to attend etiquette classes and lessons to prepare for specific ceremonies. None of it came naturally to me. I messed up repeatedly and was scolded on a daily basis. Whenever I embarrassed myself, my grandmother would mutter, "I suppose that venturing a business must pollute the blood as well as the spirit." I knew she was insulting both my mom and my dad with those words. My dad worked hard for me, and that was all she had to say about him. It didn't take long for me to start hating her as well. And so when my brother's teacher showed up and told us where my mother was, I decided to follow my dad on his journey instead of staying with my grandmother. Dad was hesitant. He thought it would be safer for me to stay behind. My mother came from the Milia aristocracy, and my father from an Asuran noble house. I had a good lineage, at least in those terms. Because of that, my grandfather was willing to take me into his household on a permanent basis. But I hated that idea. So I begged my dad to take me with him. I cried and pleaded. And eventually, I got to come along. Yet, in the end, my dad sent me off to live with Rudius. He said things would be too dangerous from now on. He said Rudius was living up north, so I should go or stay there and wait for him. He said he'd follow me up there once he found my mom. I cried. I refused. I pleaded with him to take me along. The last thing I wanted was to be separated from him now, after we'd come so far together. If Richard hadn't showed up, then when he did, I might have worn my dad down eventually, and then I would probably have gotten sick or injured on that harsh journey across the Beggaret continent. It would have probably caused him all sorts of trouble. Thanks to Richard, it didn't come to that. I remembered him so clearly. On the day I met my brother, Richard had reached out and caught me when I tripped in the street. He patted my head and given me an apple. I didn't know his name at the time. At some point, I learned he was my brother's bodyguard, but I never got the chance to ask his name. He was just as kind the second time we met. He patted me on the head again and gently persuaded me to do the right thing. And so I ended up heading north towards my brother's new home. Aisha was full of energy and enthusiasm from the moment we got on the road. She dropped the good girl act she put on around Dad and Lilia, and started acting like the leader of our expedition and came up with all sorts of crazy plans. I thought she was being stupid. It seemed ridiculous for her to try to take charge when we had two grown-ups traveling with us. But for some reason, Richard and Ginger took her seriously and even agreed to most of her ideas. It didn't seem fair at all. Her opinions always seemed to carry more weight. Anything I said basically got ignored. The main reason I could put up with it was because of Richard. He was considerate of my feelings, or he was considerate of my feelings at least. He always made the time to comfort me and listen to my complaints. But even he spent lots of time complimenting my brother. He called Rudius a remarkable man. He told me how much he looked forward to seeing him. He even smiled slightly when he spoke about him, and he almost never smiled. The Rudius I knew and the Rudius he talked about seemed to be entirely different people. Maybe that was when I started to be afraid of my brother. Rudius was a powerful magician. He was worthy of respect. Everyone said so. Rudius was a powerful magician. He was worthy of respect. Everyone said so. But the Rudius I knew was a man who would throw my dad to the floor and beaten him. He was a violent person. If I upset him, there was no guarantee he wouldn't hit me the way he hit my dad. I was scared to meet him. The idea of living with him for months was terrifying. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night, trembling. Sometimes I couldn't fall asleep at all. Richard was always there to comfort me, at least. He put me on his lap and we'd look up at the stars together as he told me stories of his past. Most of them were sad. For some reason, they always helped me fall asleep. When I met Rudius again for the first time in years, he was drunk and clinging to a woman. Apparently, she was some childhood friend of his from Buena Village, and they got married recently. I didn't remember her at all. I had a vague memory of some older kid hanging around Aisha and Lilia, but I didn't remember her being anything like this Sylphie person. She must have changed a lot over the years. Rudius was clearly enjoying his life here to the fullest. It made me angry to see that. My dad hadn't wasted any time playing around with women for years and years. He said he was putting that on hold until he found my mom. He hadn't even touched Lilia, let alone any of the other women in his life. My brother's first priority, on the other hand, was his own happiness. That made me mad. I couldn't bring myself to say anything, though. I was afraid of him. I was afraid he might start hitting me if I made him angry. Would Regard step in and defend me if it came to that? It was hard to say. He seemed really happy to see Rudius again. Maybe he wouldn't take my side. Maybe he'd say I was being rude or selfish. I couldn't say anything that first night. And then the very next day, Regard left for good. I'd assume he'd be staying with us for a little while longer. I didn't want him to go, but he left anyway. I was even more afraid than before. The only people left in the house were Rudius, his wife, and Aisha. My little sister was overjoyed about being with Rudius again. Sophie seemed like a nice enough person, but she wasn't on my side. I didn't have anyone on my side. I was stuck here until my dad got back. I had to live in fear for months and months. Rudius would probably be nice to Aisha, but strict with me. He'd praise my sister and tell me to try harder. Aisha always said it was my fault I couldn't do anything right. She said I didn't put in the effort, but there were things I just couldn't do, no matter how hard I tried. Even when I wanted to improve, even when I put in lots of practice, I still couldn't compare to her. So what was I supposed to do? For now, all I could do was stay out of the way. I hid myself away, hoping no one would get mad at me, hoping no one would tell me how inferior I was. The city outside was covered in snow. I was afraid of getting tossed out in the cold on my own. Hold on 1 second.
You good? Everything okay?
Sorry, I had something in my nose. I had to...
You're fine, man. You're fine.
Yeah. Regis decided I had to start attending school. That university sounded pretty different from the school I'd attended back in Milashion. Could enroll as a first year, but that didn't mean all my classmates would be my age, or would be my age. There were all sorts of people studying there, and most of them were older than me. To be honest, I didn't want to go. I knew I'd just end up being compared to Aisha again. As it turned out, though, my sister had no intention of going to school ever again. That was good news for me, at least. Without her around, maybe I could do a little better. My brother gave Aisha a condition, though. She had to take the university's entrance exam. This was a test everyone had to take before they entered the school, which meant I'd be taking it too. That discouraged me deeply. There was no way I could pass a test without even studying for it. When I told Rudius that, he said he could just buy me a spot at the university. Such a thoughtless, rude thing to say that I got angry, despite myself. Then Aisha got mad at me for being mad, and it turned into a fight. Could I out you two? My brother's cold tone sent off a twinge of fear inside me. Thought he was going to punch me for a second. I was so scared I cried a little. Was I going to have to keep living like this? Constantly flinching in fear? The day of the exam, Rudius told me about the dorms. Apparently, the University of Magic let its students live in big buildings on the campus to help them grow more independent. It sounded like the solution to all my problems. I had no doubt my sister would pass the exam, which meant she wouldn't have to go to school. So if I moved into the dorms, I wouldn't have to see her or Rudius anymore. No one would compare me to anybody. I could just be myself and live my own life. The more I thought about it, the more perfect it sounded. A few days later, we got the results from the test, and my brother asked me what I wanted to do now. Hesitantly, I admitted that I wanted to live in the dorms. I was afraid he might get angry. My dad had wanted me to stay with Rudius, and he'd probably told Rudius to keep an eye on me in his letter. I thought my brother might get mad at me, maybe even hit me for being so selfish. But, to my surprise, Rudius agreed immediately. It was Aisha who got angry. She thought it was unfair that I was getting what I wanted. Up until now, she'd always gotten better treatment than me. I guess she didn't like the fact that Rudius had tested her, but not me. Still, why had my brother agreed to my request? I didn't know. I didn't understand him at all. Looking back, I realized that he hadn't gotten upset with me at all since I arrived here, except for that one time I fought with Aisha. Maybe he just wasn't interested in me at all. Maybe he thought taking care of me was nothing more than a nuisance, and he saw this as a golden opportunity to kick me out. For all I knew, he'd been planning to dump me in the dorms regardless. That would be convenient as far as I was concerned, but for some reason, the thought made me a little sad. Everything about living in the dorms was new to me. It was genuinely exciting. For the first time in my life, I had a roommate, and I was going to be living with an older girl named Marissa. She was a demon. My grandmother always said demons were evil creatures, monsters to be driven away or destroyed. If I hadn't met Regerd, I probably would have kept on believing that. But I had met Regerd, so I introduced myself politely to Marissa, and she welcomed me warmly in return. I needed a lot of help since I was starting in the middle of a school term, and Marissa was really there for me. She taught me how the meals worked here and where the bathrooms were and the rules of the dorm. As she was showing me around the place, a scary-looking demon girl from the self-defense squad spotted us and introduced herself to me. "We're all one big family here," she said, "so we've got to look out for each other." I was a little intimidated by her, but Marissa told me she was a good-hearted person who took her responsibility seriously. All in all, I was very much looking forward to my new life here. It was annoying that I had to go back to my brother's house once every 10 days, but he didn't ask me too many specific questions, so it wasn't that big a deal. And so I began my new life as a boarding school student. Immediately, I realized that the classes here are very difficult. I think it was partially because the teachers explained everything so differently compared to the ones back in Millis. It might have been different if I'd been there for all the lessons from the beginning, but I was jumping in midway. There were lots of lectures I just couldn't follow. Back in Millis, we'd had a lot of classes about religion, but that wasn't even a subject here. Instead, we had practical lessons in magic. I wasn't too good at those either. The professor didn't bother explaining the basics. It was all a little discouraging, but if my grades were too terrible, I might end up being dragged back to my brother's house. I tried to study in my dorm room, but it wasn't helping. And then just as I was reaching the end of my rope, Marissa was nice enough to start tutoring me. With her patient help, I finally managed to get my head around some of the concepts I was supposed to be learning in class. I should probably have understood all this instantly. Sometimes I hated myself for being so stupid. The campus was very large, and I got lost on a regular basis. Practical lessons in magic and fitness were particularly bad. They held those in a bunch of different rooms I could never remember how to find. Every time I got lost, I'd have to ask some other student for directions or wait until someone from my class came to find me. Once, I even ran into Rudius while I was lost. For some reason, he was walking with the most important student in the entire school. It was incredibly embarrassing. Everyone in the university was afraid of my brother. From the sound of things, he was the boss of a small gang of 6 thugs that went around doing anything they wanted. 2 of those people lived in my dorm. They were tall, scary-looking girls who strutted around like they owned the place. Marissa had warned me not to get in their way if I could help it. Rumor had it that Rudius had ordered those 2 to collect a pair of panties from every cute girl in school. Did my brother's wife know about that? Probably not. I had no idea what he was planning to do with all that underwear in the first place, but it made me really mad. My dad was off risking his life to save my mom, and my brother was just playing around like an idiot. My opinion of him was sinking steadily lower. But despite his bizarre actions, my brother's reputation was strangely positive. People said he never picked on ordinary students. Although he did as he pleased, he didn't hurt anybody or harass them. In fact, he'd supposedly told all the tough kids to stop picking on anyone weaker than them. One of the scarier kids in my class even bragged about having spoken to Rudius once. Rudius was better at magic than anyone else in the university, and apparently he was a good teacher too. People said he was tutoring a girl even younger than me. My classmates, my teachers, and even Marissa told me I should try to follow in his footsteps. They wanted me to be like him, to be like the brother I feared and hated, didn't understand at all. I didn't want to be like him, but more than anything, it hurt to know that I couldn't compare to him. He was better than me at everything, just like Aisha. No matter how hard I tried, I'd never be a match for him. I hated Rudius. That he was a terrible person. But the fact was, I couldn't even begin to compete with him. One day I returned to my dorm room and flopped straight down on my bed. A great big jumble of emotions had been growing inside me for weeks now. Bitterness, sadness, self-pity, anger, and who knew what else. Couldn't hold them back anymore. Couldn't stop myself from breaking down. Marissa came back to the room a little later. She saw me crying in my pillow and gently asked me what was wrong. But I just said, "It's nothing," and pulled my blanket over my head. What was I supposed to do now? Was I wrong about Rudius, or was it everybody else? It was probably me. Probably wasn't as bad a person as I thought he was. I was very young on the day I saw Rudius punch my dad. After it happened, my dad tried to explain that he'd been going through a lot, and I could never understand what that was supposed to mean. But now, after all this time, it finally made some sense to me. I was going through a lot myself at the moment, after all. If I worked hard, things turned around and managed to cheer up. It would really suck to have someone say, "Wow, look at you. Must be nice to have such a carefree life." I'd probably want to punch them, in fact, even if it was my own dad. Deep down, Rudius and I were probably similar people. He wasn't some inhuman monster after all. But that said, how was I supposed to go talk things through with him now? What would he even want from me? How had he managed to make up with Dad anyway? I thought about it, but I thought some more. And I thought some more. Nothing came to mind, but eventually my belly began to hurt. My stomach cramped up painfully and I started to feel nauseated, so I burrowed deeper into my bed and did nothing. I couldn't do anything. Couldn't even bring myself to go face my brother. Times like these, Dad was always there for me. When something bad happened and I curled up in bed, he'd come in and gently rub my back for a while. And after we were separated, Reger took his place. He put me on his lap and pat my head and told me stories. I didn't have anyone like that here. Marissa was nice to me, but she wasn't on my side. She could suggest was that I should talk to my brother or try going back to class. I knew all that already. Problem was that my body didn't want to move. How much time had passed since I curled up in my bed? I kept thinking in circles for what felt like many hours, then falling asleep out of exhaustion. I repeated that cycle a couple times, so it might have been a few days by now. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, and for some reason, Rudius was right in front of me. He was sitting backwards on a chair and staring at me. Norn, Rudius? It felt like the first time I'd spoken my brother's name out loud. The two of us had broken the silence at the same time. Apparently, I wasn't hallucinating then. How had he gotten into the girls' dorm? I was so confused I didn't know what to say. My brother was quiet too. For a while, we just stared at each other. This had to be the first time I looked this closely at Rudius' face. He looked a little anxious. His features reminded me a little of my dad, which was kind of reassuring, but of course they look alike. I'm sorry, Norn. It hasn't been easy for you here, has it? Rudius said, his voice hesitant. I guess I don't really even understand you that well. I know this must be hard for you, but I'm not sure what to do. Was it just me, or was he really nervous? That reminded me of my dad, too. My brother fell silent again. He just sat there quietly, not moving an inch. He was watching me anxiously, but he didn't budge from that chair. My dad probably would have wrapped his arms around me by now, and Reger would have patted me on the head. My brother didn't even approach me. Oh. Suddenly I understood why. He couldn't approach me. He was too scared I might reject him. The instant that thought occurred to me, I felt all my negative emotions began to melt away. I didn't hate Rudius anymore. I couldn't find him scary either. He was too much like my dad. He was never going to hit me, no matter what. He probably wasn't ever going to hit my dad again either. I needed to forgive him. There were tears rolling down my cheeks now. My throat was quivering. After a moment, I started to sob. I'm sorry, Rudius. I'm sorry. Slowly, cautiously, my brother stood up and sat down next to me. He gently put his hand on my head and then hugged me to his chest. His hand was warm and his chest was firm. He smelled a little bit like my dad, too. I spent the rest of the night crying in his arms. Does this count as a new chapter?
I'm gonna
I guess like a pause?
No.
Like,
I was going to say no either, because it's just his name. It doesn't say
Yeah,
like
I
chapter
wouldn't-
or something.
Yeah. Because like we
Okay.
didn't change for any of the other pauses there were, so
Yeah. Sorry, winding up for fake crying actually makes my tears well up.
no, I get it. I
I
did
mean,
the
good.
same.
It makes it more realistic.
Yeah. Hold on.
It's like
Yeah.
be the crybaby. It sells
Well,
the
you have to,
performance.
Well, you have to like suck it back and then like kind of cry a little bit. You know what I mean? Like hold like
You
the
have to
tear-
cry just enough that you can
but,
still
like,
be coherent.
by the time you do it, you kind of actually kind of go into it. I'm like, fuck, don't actually cry.
I don't need you to
Stop.
actually cry here.
You have other
You
things
don't
you
need to
need
be
to
too real performance. Yeah.
Worry about it. Yeah. Rudius. In the end, I didn't do much of anything. Norn didn't tell me what was going on. She never told me what she was upset about or what she'd been feeling. She just cried for a long time, and then when it was finally over, she looked up and mumbled, "I'll be okay now." And that was it. But for some reason, she really did look okay for once. She even managed to look me right in the eye. I felt enormously relieved. Something told me she was going to be all right now. And so I left the rest to Sylphie and slipped out of my sister's room. Norn grew noticeably more cheerful after that incident. The changes weren't exactly dramatic. She just started saying hello to me when we passed each other in the hall. We still didn't talk that much, but she didn't start hanging all over me like her sister. She was probably still getting compared to me in her classes, but I guess it didn't bother her as much anymore. I still didn't understand what she was feeling. I hadn't done anything meaningful at all. It made me feel a little pathetic. I knew how it felt to be looked down on, and I knew how it felt to isolate yourself in your room, but I'd still failed to come up with anything useful to say. At the end of the day, I guess Norn had worked it out herself. She'd processed her feelings and pulled herself over the obstacle in her path. That was a seriously impressive accomplishment. Paul and Aisha seemed to think Norn was just a clumsy, timid kid without any special talents, but I had a very different opinion of her now. She managed to climb up out of the hole she spent an entire lifetime trapped in. If I'd have been half as strong as her, maybe my first life wouldn't have turned out so miserably. Maybe I wouldn't have wound up getting punched in the face by my kind-hearted brother. It's impossible to know for sure, of course. My situation was different from Norn's. Even if I worked out my feelings, I might have never left my room. Maybe I needed to be reborn and meet Roxy for that to be possible. Either way, I couldn't change the past. The relationships I'd broken could never be repaired, and I'd never know for sure what was going through my brother's head back then. Still, I kind of felt like something was stuck between my teeth for a very long time and had just worked its way free. If Nanahoshi managed to return to our old world someday, I'd have to ask her to take a message to my brother. Thanks for trying to get through to me back then. I'm sorry. Chapter 6. There you go.
Yep. Life with the Grey Rat Sisters. Another month had passed, and the weather was finally warming up. This would be the second summer I'd spent in Renoa. Even at this time of year, it wasn't exactly hot in this region, but people were starting to dress a little more lightly. The students at school switched to short-sleeved uniforms, which I didn't mind one bit, and Aisha changed up her maid uniform as well. Sylphie even started wearing sleeveless shirts around the house. I didn't remember her owning anything like that before, but I guess she'd purchased a few more outfits after moving in with me. I certainly wasn't going to complain about her choosing to show some skin. The sight of those slender white shoulders made it a little harder to keep my hands to myself, though. Summer was a nice season, all right. And up here, you didn't have any nasty, multi-legged visitors scuttling into your house to nibble at your food, either. The changing seasons reminded me that I hadn't seen Bodyguardy around for some time now. Maybe he'd wandered off somewhere and forgotten to tell anyone. A few other things had changed over the course of this month. First of all, it seemed Norn had made a few friends. I'd noticed her moving around in a group of 3 girls and 2 boys, including some students from different classes. These were probably Norn's first real friends. I wanted to introduce myself to them, so I'd asked her to bring them over to our house sometime, but she'd flatly rejected the idea. I guess she found the idea of introducing them to her family too embarrassing. On the bright side, it seemed the way I'd barged into her classroom apparently hadn't caused her too much trouble after the fact. That was a bit of a relief. Norn and I were also getting along a little better, just in general. As a prime example, she'd recently asked me to tutor her in some of her subjects. I happily accepted, of course. I was ready to teach her all my secret techniques and everything I knew. But then I realized that if I spent too much time focusing on helping her, Aisha might get a little sulky over being left out. After thinking it over a little, I decided to meet Norn in the library after school for regular tutoring sessions and limit them to an hour per day. We could go over the things she'd learned that day and review what her classes would be covering tomorrow. That could make a big difference by itself. Norn was obviously trying hard to keep up, but she seemed to struggle with putting the theory from her textbooks into actual practice. That said, she wasn't nearly as bad as Eris or Ghislaine had been. With consistent effort, I felt confident she'd get up to an average level in no time. By the way, hold on. Oh. By the way, Regard said he was from the Babinos area, right? She asked me once. I know you were in the Demon Continent for a while, Rudius. Do you know where that is? Not off the top of my head. I think he said it's close to the, Biagoya region, maybe? I've never been myself, though. The two of us were on good enough terms now that we actually had some casual conversations during our study sessions, but for some reason Norn mostly just wanted to discuss Regerd. I guess he was our main common interest. Not that I really minded, you know? I was actually happy to have someone else I could talk to about him. I see. Sorry to keep pestering you, but what's the demon continent like in general? Well, all the monsters that live there are really big. The culture's pretty different also, but it has some similarities with this region actually. Most of the people there are just ordinary folks living ordinary lives. I did notice that Norn still spoke to me a little stiffly. Her tone tended to be kind of overly polite, especially for a little sister talking to her own brother. Aisha and I had grown more informal with each other, but I guess Norn felt more comfortable this way for now. Oh, that reminds me, Rudius, did Regerd ever tell you the story of his spear? Yeah, I'm never going to forget that one. Talk about a tearjerker. Absolutely. I do hope he manages to realize his goal eventually. Same here. It was about time that I moved that particular project forward, wasn't it? The general plan was to manufacture figurines of a spirit warrior and sell them bundled with a book. I hadn't given up on it by any means, but Julie was still inexperienced and didn't have much mana, so mass-producing figures wasn't an option at present. Still, that didn't mean I couldn't get to work on a prototype at least. The book was another matter. The main issue there had been finding the time to write. I'd spent many hours over the last few months learning advanced healing and intermediate detoxification magic. I was good at the brute memorization those subjects required, but they'd still kept me very busy. At this point, I wasn't sure what I wanted to learn next. Moving on to advanced detoxification seemed logical, but there wasn't anything else that really caught my interest. It wouldn't hurt to get my fire and wind magic up to the saintly level, but that tier of spells tended to involve dramatic manipulation of the climate rather than more practical spells you might use on a regular basis. Learning new things was always nice, but I wanted to focus on something more useful, maybe even have a skill like horseback riding. As I was running the possibilities through my head, it occurred to me that I could take some of my newfound spare time and use it to work on my book about the Spurd. I could probably get a little writing done during my sessions with Norn too. I was looking to write a frank, straightforward summary of the tribe's tragic history. Prose wasn't my strong point, but I could probably pull something together if I really put my mind to it. Or so I told myself at first. But when I found myself staring at the first blank piece of paper, I couldn't even decide where to begin. Was it best just to write down the facts, like the script of a documentary? Would it be more readable in the form of a diary? I'd often heard it said that you were better off starting with a small project for your first piece of creative writing, rather than trying to draft an epic masterpiece right off the bat. Maybe I should make this a booklet, no longer than 10 or so pages. It would be easier to hand that out with the figurines anyway. If I went that route, it was probably best to keep it simple and light. I could make it into a basic good versus evil story, with Lapis revealed as the true villain. Wait, wasn't Lapis considered a legendary hero in the Demon Continent, though? If I made him sound totally evil, I might piss off a lot of people. One afternoon, I was struggling with these questions for the 100th time. Norn peered over at my work. What are you writing there, Rudius? I'm trying to put together a book about Regent's past, actually. The problem is, I'm not sure how to approach the project. Her interest evidently piqued. Norn pulled my paper over and took a closer look. At the top was my working title, The Tale of the Great Warrior Regerd and the Persecution of His People. There was only about a page of actual text so far, mainly a quick outline of who Regerd was and what he was like. Of course I was pretty biased, so he came out sounding kind of like a saintly hero. Is this all you've got so far? Yeah, I haven't made much progress yet. The main issue was that I didn't know where to start the actual story, or how to tell it. I still remembered Regerd's tales of his people's actions in the Lapis War, and I knew the basic story of their persecution afterward. Still, it had been several years since I heard these stories, so I was a little fuzzy on some of the fine details. In hindsight, I really should have taken some notes at the time. Well, would you mind letting me help out? Asked Norn tentatively. It was a very unexpected offer, but apparently Regerd had made a habit of sitting my sister on his lap every night, patting her on the head and telling her stories from his past. Not fair. I never got to sit on Regerd's lap. Okay, wait, let's try to be an adult about this. That would be a huge help, Norn. Just make sure you don't neglect your studies, okay? All right. From that day on, Norn and I started working on this project together. When she had a little extra time in between her lessons and her study sessions, she would use it to write down Regid's stories. Her writing was a little childish at times and always had some rough spots, but for some reason, reading it made me remember Regid so vividly that I often caught myself tearing up. It had a punch to it. The more I read of her writing, the more I started to feel like she might have some talent in this area. Again, I wasn't exactly an unbiased observer, but you do tend to improve faster when you're doing something you enjoy. If she kept at it long enough, maybe she'd blossom into a brilliant author someday. For the moment, though, I focused on fixing her minor mistakes and clumsy sentences. I was basically the team editor now. I had a feeling the book was going to turn out a lot better this way than if I tried to write it myself. Well, while my relationship with Norn was beginning to improve, there had been a small development with Aisha, too. For once, it had nothing to do with Norn. The two of them still weren't especially friendly with each other, though Aisha was being careful not to insult her sister ever since I scolded her for it. She was always at least superficially polite when her sister came to visit. That actually concerned me a little bit. I didn't want her to feel like she couldn't express her real thoughts at all. I was happy that Norn was starting to warm up to me, but that didn't mean I could neglect my relationship with Aisha either, and so I decided to give her permission to speak her mind. You know, Aisha, if there's something you want to say, you don't have to bottle it up inside. Could you be more specific, Rudius? Well, I don't know. I've been spending a lot of time with Norn lately, right? Maybe you're feeling a little attention starved or something? Maybe you've been working too hard and need a vacation. Maybe you want to spend the whole day in bed? Putting a finger to her chin, Aisha tilted her head to the side in puzzlement. Too cute. You're giving me permission to be selfish then? That's right. You can be a little selfish around me. There's no need to hold back. Well, one thing does come to mind. The mischievous smile on her face was setting off some alarm bells. What was she planning to demand? Hopefully not my body, even as a joke. I'd have to make up some excuse to refuse, and then she'd probably be sulky for a week. I'd like a salary, please. Well, that wasn't what I'd been expecting. A salary? Now that I thought about it, though, Aisha had been working diligently as our maid for some time now. If anything, it was strange that we weren't paying her. But then again, we were family, right? She wasn't an employee. Maybe we could think of it like an allowance then. She was helping out around the house all day, so she wanted some extra pocket money. Fair enough. Okay, we could do that. I agreed to the general idea immediately, but we waited until Sylphie got back home to discuss the specifics. When I offered her a relatively large amount of money, though, she actually declined and tried to talk me down to a smaller figure. Talk about mature. Was this kid really only 10 years old? In the end, we settled on a number we could all agree on. Can I ask why you brought this up, though? Is there something you want to buy? I had to admit I was curious about what had prompted this request. Aisha could buy whatever she wanted, of course, but it couldn't hurt to know what that was. Well, a girl has her needs. Wow, that really clears things up. I was sort of hoping to hear what those needs are, kid. Are you that curious, brother dear? All right, then. Why don't you come along on my next shopping trip? Oh, that sounded like a date. A date with my little sister. What a lovely concept. I did let Sylphie know about our plans in advance. Unfortunately, she was going to be working that day. I felt slightly guilty about running around town with another girl while my wife was at the office, but it's not cheating when it's your little sister. What was Aisha planning to buy, though? Hopefully it wouldn't be a muscular slave or something. I didn't want some sweaty macho guy hanging around in my living room all the time, to be honest. It was bad enough having a giant six-armed monster randomly drop in for dinner. Not that he'd stopped by in months. On the day of our date, Aisha led me to the market and headed straight for a general goods store that sold all sorts of miscellaneous everyday products. The shelves were stuffed with knickknacks, but there were no other customers to be seen. From the looks of things, they mainly sold second-hand goods. After browsing a little, Aisha bought 3 small flower pots there. What are you going to do with those? I asked. Drop them on the heads of any demon kings who happen to be passing by? No, I was just going to plant some flowers in them, said Aisha, looking up at me bashfully, as long as you don't mind, of course. There was only one possible way for me to reply to that. Of course I don't mind. Still, I hadn't really pictured Aisha as the flower girl type. I mainly thought of her as an energetic baby genius. In my mind, her hobbies were cleaning up, counting money, and balancing budgets. Growing plants was more of a slow, contemplative hobby. You had to let nature take its course, watching the results unfold over the course of weeks or months. And even a genius wasn't going to be 100% successful at growing things. But maybe that was exactly why it appealed to her. She was used to being able to manipulate things to her liking. This would be partially out of her control. Shouldn't you buy some potting soil too, then? I said. The earth around here isn't the most fertile, so it won't be easy to grow flowers in it. I was going to ask you to make some for me with your magic, Rudius, if you don't mind. She hit me with the pleading eyes again. There was only one possible reply. Of course I don't mind. I was a man, after all. The idea of digging around in the dirt and sowing some seeds held a certain appeal for me. I'd have to whip her up some amazing soil later. The kind that lets you grow, baobab trees from tulip seeds. What kind of flowers were you thinking of planting? I collected a bunch of different seeds on the way up here, actually. I'll use those. Those might not actually grow, just so you're aware. I think it'll probably be okay. The two of us puttered around in the store for a little longer, chatting about Aisha's plans. I picked out a pair of earrings for Sylphie before we left, shaped like teardrops, with little blue stones in the center. These would definitely look good on her. Is that a present for Sylphie? Yep, I'm the kind of man who doesn't take his wife for granted. Sylphie's a lucky woman, all right. But when she's busy, brother dear, maybe you could spare me a little love as well. Oh, the upturned eyes again. As always, there was only one possible reply. Not happening. The old man would beat me senseless. Darn. We paid for our purchases and left the little store behind. Our next stop was a place that specialized in the sale of fabrics and furnishings. There were big rolls of hand-woven cloth hanging all over the place. Princess Ariel had actually recommended this store to me a while ago, back when I was buying rugs for the house. They sold good quality stuff at a wide range of prices and seemed to attract a broad clientele. I didn't know how my sister had learned about it, though. Inside the store, Aisha quickly picked out some curtains. They were pink and frilly and were definitely on the expensive side. When she took them up to the counter, though, she proceeded to haggle ruthlessly with the clerk. She dropped my name and Princess Ariel's and used every single card she had to play. By the end, she'd managed to talk them down to an only moderately pricey figure. Do you have enough to pay for those, Aisha? I can chip in a little if you want. That's okay. I've got exactly enough. Handing over the remainder of her allowance, Aisha completed her purchase. She'd used every coin of the money I'd given her. The girl had a real way with money. It was a little frightening, to be honest. It's a good idea to save a little bit of your pocket money for later, you know, I warned as we left the store. Unexpected expenses can pop out of nowhere. Hell, you might get teleported to the demon continent for no apparent reason. Ever since that incident, I'd made a habit of hiding cash inside my clothes at all times. I even had a few bills in the sole of my shoes. Okay, I'll save a little next time. Still, flower pots and frilly pink curtains, huh? I really had taken Aisha for a little brainiac so far. But she clearly had a girly side. I've always wanted a few cute things like these, you know, she said. What, Lilia wouldn't buy them for you? Mom always said no. She thinks it's wrong for a maid to decorate based on her personal tastes. I hope you don't mind, Rudius. The girl wasn't just clever, she was good at playing with your emotions. Not only had she wrapped her arms around my waist, she was looking up at me with Bambi eyes. I knew it was all an act, of course, but it was so cute, I couldn't bring myself to care. There was only one possible reply anyway. It's totally fine, Aisha. Good thing I wasn't a creepy old man or anything. I might have kidnapped her on the spot. What the fuck? In the weeks following this little date... Oh, go ahead.
I said, Jesus Christ.
Yep.
I've already did the goddamn it Rudy bit earlier. We don't need to do it again.
Eh. In the weeks following this little date, Aisha's room grew steadily more girly. She seemed to like cute, tiny things and kept finding small pots to plant small flowers in and lining up fist-sized dolls on her shelves. At some point, she even embroidered charming little designs on the hem of her apron. I was starting to get a little worried she might evolve into a gyaru if this kept going. Still, both of my sisters were doing well. I was content. Although she wasn't my sister, Nanahoshi was finally getting her groove back too. In our last experiment, she'd managed to summon a plastic bottle. That bottle was currently sitting in the on the windowsill in her laboratory, serving as a vase for a single flower. With that success under our belts, we'd moved on to the second phase of her plan. From this point, we'll be trying to summon organic matter from our old world, she declared to me one afternoon. Organic matter? That's right. I was thinking we could start with food. After my contribution to her recent success, Nanahoshi seemed a bit more inclined to trust me than before. She actually took the time to review the phases of her plan with me. Summon an inorganic object, summon something composed of organic matter, summon a living thing, a plant or small animal, summon a living thing that fits certain specific criteria, return a summoned living thing to its previous location. The plastic bottle we'd summoned previously might not technically be a fully inorganic object, depending on how you define the term, but she didn't seem to regard this as a major issue. Is that step with the specific criteria really that important? Well, I'd say so. When I'm teleporting myself back home, I don't want to pop back out in a foreign country or something. Basically, she wanted to get closer and closer to summoning something as as complex as a human being, and at the very end, teleport herself back to Japan with pinpoint accuracy. Every step of the experiment was building up to that specific goal. At our current stage, she was already capable of setting some conditions on what she summoned, but these were fairly broad. The individual results would vary widely. For example, if she tried to summon a cat, she might get a tortoiseshell female house cat, a spotted tomcat, a tiger, or a panther. Her research right now was focused on finding ways to make her spells more precise. She wanted to be able to summon a house cat, not just a feline, and even specify the exact kind of house cat that she wanted. Defining the conditions is quite tricky, though. She muttered more to herself than me. Defining the conditions is quite tricky, though. She muttered more to herself than me. I suppose I'll have to go see the old man again at some point. This old man was presumably the authority on summoning magic, who she'd mentioned once or twice before. Does this guy know a lot about this, conditional summoning? Well... Nanahoshi put her hand to her chin and thought for a moment, then nodded to herself and began to explain. Let me elaborate a little. In this world, summoning magic is generally divided between fiend summoning and spirit summoning. Really? Fiend summoning apparently referred to calling forth specific monsters. You'd summon an intelligent creature using a complex set of magic circles, pay it some form of compensation, and set it to work for you. This was the kind of summoning that people generally thought of when they used the word. Usually this meant summoning garden variety this isn't her explaining. Oh, okay. Usually this meant summoning garden variety monsters of the kind you might encounter in the wild. It was also possible, however, to summon legendary beasts believed to reside in other worlds. Nor was fiend summoning limited to living things. It was possible to target inanimate objects too. Nanahoshi producing that plastic bottle would technically be categorized as a fiend summoning spell. If I mastered this, I might be able to summon the panties Master Roxy was wearing. Spirit summoning, on the other hand, was a very different kind of technique. This actually involved creating artificial entities out of mana. Designing these spells was apparently similar to programming in a way. Just so you know, it's best we don't discuss that part openly, she said. Why? Most people think that spirits are living things that reside in the barren world, and we're just calling them to ours. In other words, it was thought of as just another variation of fiend summoning. Fiends were harder to control, but they could think and act on their own, and they could adapt to unfamiliar circumstances. By contrast, spirits were quite easy to control, but usually only acted in a few set patterns. That said, if you had the programming chops to build some very complex code, you might be able to craft a spirit that could pass for human. She'd seen some She'd seen some at the aforementioned old man's place. And uh and on a slightly different note, here's that magic circle I promised you earlier. Nanahoshi handed me a scroll. There was a dense, complicated magic circle inscribed at its center, covering about half a page. What is this? A summoning scroll for a lamplight spirit. A lamplight spirit was a simple thing that would float along behind the summoner while emitting a bright light. It was capable of understanding simple commands like light up the area, but as time passed, its mana would dwindle until it disappeared. It was a very basic spirit, but if you used enough mana, it could stick around for a relatively long amount of time. It wasn't the most exciting spell I'd ever learned. To be honest, I'd been expecting something a little flashier for my reward. This magic circle is an original creation of that old man I keep talking about, by the way, Nanahoshi said. Not even the Magician's Guild knows about it. Huh? Really? When I heard it was a limited edition product, though, it suddenly seemed a lot more exciting. I guess I was still Japanese at heart. Yeah, and I'll get you something more impressive next time, okay? I promise. Nanahoshi pressed her hands together in a pleading gesture. I hadn't seen anyone do that in a long time. It made me a little nostalgic. I think you should be able to use your earth magic... Oh, wait. I think you should be able to use your earth magic to make a template of that design, she said. That way you can print a whole bunch of copies. I'm sure the Magician's Guild would pay handsomely for them. You're okay with me selling copies? Won't the guy who made it get upset? Trust me, he's got bigger things on his mind. I doubt he'd even care. Well, it was good to know you didn't need to write out magic scrolls by hand every single time, at least. If you do decide to sell to the guild, make sure you mention my name, she added. That should ensure they don't try to rip you off. Got it, thanks. I decided to file that idea away for now. It never hurt to have a potential source of income in your back pocket. In any case, the fact that these spirits were purely artificial was interesting. I felt like it might be relevant to Zenoba's project. By combining different disciplines of magic, maybe we could... Maybe we could make ourselves a robot capable of saying, Hawawa every time it got flustered. Is that a reference I don't understand?
I think it's
That
just
has
like,
to be some
I
kind
think
of
it's just
reference.
like either a reference or like a general, like, you know, when anime girls get flustered, they're like, wah, 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 you know.
I guess.
I don't know. Sounds like a reference though.
That has to be some kind of reference.
Probably.
He has made a lot of real world ones, so I wouldn't be surprised with some character he's referring to.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Nanahoshi, if you can randomly summon objects from our world now, isn't there a chance we could bring over some really useful stuff? It seemed like a decent idea on the face of it, but Nanahoshi shook her head. At this stage, I'm only capable of summoning simple objects composed of a single consistent substance, although I suppose that does give us a fairly wide range of possibilities. A single consistent substance, huh? That explained why the plastic bottle had come with a cap or hadn't come with a cap or label. But if she got better at setting her conditions, maybe we could summon complex objects piece by piece and then put them back together. Also, it's not a great idea to pull too many things that belong in our world into this one. I think I mentioned this before, didn't I? Oh, was she still worried about the whole messing with the timeline thing? I feel like you're being a little too paranoid about that, honestly, I said. You're welcome to test that theory after I'm safely back home. I'd rather not take any chances. Wow, cold. Zenoba, meanwhile, had finally managed to finish up his red worm figurine the other day. It didn't look exactly like the one I'd seen, with the horns on its forehead and all, but it looked cool, and that was the most important thing. Julie was very happy with her belated present. She wasn't the sort of kid who smiled a lot, but she spent quite some time holding the figurine up, oohing and ahhing as she examined it from different angles. Thank you very much, Master. Thank you, Grandmaster. Turning around to face the two of us, she executed a slightly stiff but respectable bow. You're welcome, Zenoba said with a lordly nod. Keep up the hard work! Yes, sir, she replied happily. Julie was speaking the human tongue much more fluently these days. It wasn't because of anything I'd done, though. Ginger made a habit of correcting her whenever she slipped up, and you always learn faster when you have someone to point out your mistakes. Aren't you a lucky girl, Julie? Make sure you take good care of it, Ginger said. Yes, thank you too, Miss Ginger. Ginger was now a constant presence in Zenoba's room. She usually kept herself positioned by the wall, stepping out to fetch drinks for Zenoba or see to the needs of the visitors. At the moment, she was renting an apartment in a building close to the university. I'd once asked her why she didn't just move into the empty room for bodyguards next to Zenoba's chambers, but she said it would be presumptuous of her to reside next door to the prince. Their arrangement felt less like a master-servant relationship and more like a very weird commuter marriage. Or maybe the bond between a cult leader and his most faithful disciple. The woman would probably cut her stomach open instantly if Zenoba ordered her to. Did you need something, Rudius? I was just wondering why you swore loyalty to Zenoba in the first place. Ginger nodded at my abrupt question, looking rather pleased. The prince's mother asked me personally to take care of him, and I swore in that moment to devote myself to his service. Well, that's nice. Go on. What do you mean? That's the story. Wait, that's it? That was enough to make you put up with all of this. Then again, swearing an oath of fealty was probably serious business. If you were going to break that promise when you were treated poorly, you probably wouldn't make it in the first place. I'd once read in some manga that feudal society was composed of a few natural-born sadists and a great number of masochists. Maybe Ginger just fell in that second category. When I thought of it that way, it made a little bit more sense, although the reality was probably something not quite as crude. Cliff was making progress with his research too. He'd recently completed his first prototype of a magical tool to suppress the symptoms of Elenalisa's curse. He announced this to me personally one day, looking even prouder of himself than usual. Essentially, it forces in external mana to counteract the flow of internal mana. It's not enough to eliminate the curse, but it slows it down. He went on to explain the details in complex technical language. A lot of it dealt with how he aligned the external mana with the frequency of the curse's mana in a very specific way. He also spent a lot of time emphasizing his own brilliance, though, so I think I'll omit that part. The bottom line was that he'd found a way to make Elenalisa's curse less severe. However, there are two remaining problems, he said. At this point in the conversation, Cliff finally let me see the device itself. It was a bulky loincloth of sorts, the kind of thing a sumo wrestler might wear. To be honest, I would have taken it for an adult diaper. I see. Well, the most obvious issue would be that it's not exactly fashionable. Indeed. I could ask Lise to walk around wearing this thing, of course. Or no, I couldn't ask Lise to walk around wearing this thing, of course. The two of them had actually gotten into a fight about it, and they almost never fought. Elenalise had actually said she didn't care how it looked, but Cliff stubbornly refused to give in. I guess he was too proud to bear the idea of making his girlfriend look ridiculous. They'd made up over the course of a single passionate night, incidentally. Their love was as nauseating as ever. Zenoba and Silent volunteered to help me out. No. Zenoba and Silent volunteered to help me out, and we've developed a plan to miniaturize the device. I'd like to make it significantly more effective, too, but I am a genius, so I'm sure it's only a matter of time. His ultimate goal was to make a device no larger than an ordinary pair of panties. It was hard to say if that was feasible, but if he did pull it off, maybe we could make a pair of gloves for Zenoba, too. It might give him a chance to make figurines with his own hands. Then again, I had a feeling he might just be naturally clumsy even without the super strength. So, what's the other problem you mentioned? Cliff frowned. That's actually the reason why I called you here today, Rudius. Oh? The thing is, the implement currently consumes far too much mana to be practical. As I recalled, magical implements required someone to pump them full of mana before they could work. Less efficient ones weren't considered especially useful for real-world applications. Ideally, Cliff wanted something that Elise could wear constantly while consuming only as much mana as she could stand to spare. But right now, the device was so thirsty for power that Cliff couldn't even keep it running for an hour. We're going to try to keep honing the design, but I could really use your help. Without you, we'd only be able to charge the thing up a few times a day. Ah, right. Okay then, I'll help out when I can. Cliff considered himself a genius magician, and his mana capacity was certainly on the greater side, but even so, it wasn't close to enough. This was exactly where I could come in handy. From that day on, I started to help out with Cliff's experiments too. Incidentally, the device did nothing to make Elise any less horny. Lately, I felt like my life had settled into a smooth and pleasant rhythm. I woke up in the morning, did my training, ate breakfast, and went to the university. I stopped by to see Zenoba and then Cliff, checking in on the progress of their research and occasionally offering some advice. After lunch, I headed over to help out Nanahoshi with her summoning experiments, and once class ended, I took an hour to tutor Norn. On my way back home, I went grocery shopping with Sylphie, and Aisha greeted us at the front door. Sylphie and I took a bath together, and the three of us ate dinner. Then we practiced magic in the living room and talked about our days. After Aisha went to bed, I worked on the baby-making project with Sylphie, then fell into a sound sleep with my wife as my body pillow. Each day went much like the one before it, but I still felt like I was making steady progress towards my goals. Maybe this was what happiness felt like. It wasn't something I'd gotten much of in my first try at life. But assuming Paul made it back safe and sound in a year or so, things should only get better from here. Big old red flag waving around. Jesus Christ.
Epic!
Yep,
Sonic,
your turn again.
Is it my turn again? Oh shoot, hold on.
Yes, it is.
I didn't realize. One second. All right. Alrighty. I don't know why I'm going Australian. I've been noticing that lately.
Ugh.
Alright, everybody. Chapter 7. Let's get right into the third turning point. Try to force it now. I don't think it's working as well. Okay. Let me get my water.
Excuse me.
I hope I was muted during that.
What is going
Oh, I didn't
on?
hear anything. Oh,
I
we
was
made
blowing
it to
my nose.
chapter 7. And,
Huzzah.
yeah.
Is that where you guys want to call it?
That's up to you guys.
We can.
Well, it's only 9:48. I just didn't know if that's where you wanted to stop things.
That's up to you guys. Sonic's is the next to read, so.
Yeah.
So have we made one rotation or two rotations? Like,
Yeah,
where are
this
we
is
at?
the first full rotation. I've already read one chapter.
Ah.
Everyone's read one chapter
Walk
basically at
past.
this point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how y'all want to do it? Y'all want to keep going till 10:30, or y'all want to start wrapping up here?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm fine either or, unless someone wants to call it a bit early or Shem Moon.
I'm fine with whatever.
Yeah.
I think the real question is Richie, are
Oh,
you
no,
just
you're
wanting to
going.
go to sleep?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna
Sleep.
say. Oh, okay.
Or you want to go back to sleep a
Did it
little
help?
more and then go for sleep for real afterwards, or you just want to end it and go to sleep for real.
We should probably just end it so you can get some rest, dude.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna
I
have
think
to
we
take.
should end it so you can get some rest, because
I gotta
Jesus.
take some
Yeah.
medication. So I
Yeah.
can, like,
I mean, we're at a good stopping point too, either way.
sleep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we made a full rotation, so
So
hope you guys don't mind everybody out in the chat.
Ugh.
But
So we'll be starting
Richie's
with chapter 8.
7.
7.
7.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I thought you said you finished 7. Sorry.
No,
Oh, no,
we,
no.
we were
No, we
just
got
about
through
to
6.
start.
Now it's 7.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Going through chapter 8 would probably take us to. Oh, okay. You know what? Actually, that's a good place to stop because then we start the turning point, the next turning point. That's a good
Oh, okay,
place to
that's
start.
cool. It's even better.
Yeah.
Well, next week I think is Subnautica anyway, right?
Um,
I don't know if
That-
it's
yeah, I
necessarily
believe so.
Subnautica,
Hold on.
but
Well, it's
yeah,
gaming week, right?
next Monday will be gaming week, so
Yeah, yeah. Or it could be Golf with Friends or something else.
yeah, whatever we play, yeah.
Yeah.
Alright.
Or Monhoon World or Wild Snowy.
Mhm.
Funny. But yeah, that if you guys are good, we'll stop it there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's fine.
All right. Y'all have a good one. Bye bye. Oh no, wait, no. We should raid somebody, right?
Yeah, we got
Sure.
we got potential raid targets, right? There's bound to be someone.
Let's see. Himiko Mio is playing the Dark Pictures anthology. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The Dark Pictures.
Vaughn is doing Dead by Daylight because that's what he do.
Oh yeah, there's my buddy Cody playing Dead by Daylight. Not the Cody you know, but a different Cody.
Ainz is playing Elden Ring, aka Distortion Devil. So our Ainz.
Mm-hmm.
Miss
Nice.
Lala is on. Let's pause is doing Mean Monday.
Henya's doing Mafia, looks like.
Miss Blob is doing TCG Card Shop. Okay.
Oh,
Um,
no, that one's not
There's
Pokemon. I'm thinking of a
Turtles and
different one with
Chill.
that.
And then Joel is playing Bioshock. Gotcha.
Maybe I should watch Joe. I've
Chacha's
been-
just reacting to internet stuff.
Mm-hmm. I don't think we're following Cha-Cha on our Twitch.
Real Cha-Cha? Hold on.
Henya's
Might just
playing
happen to find him.
Mafia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I said Mafia. Cha-Cha,
Oh,
you're
Henya.
Vom?
Yeah, yeah,
so?
your V-Mom.
Oh, I
Cha-Cha,
just
your
that's
happened
what
to
I'm talking
find
about.
that one too. That's funny.
Cha-Cha, your V-Mom. All right.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna raid,
Cha-Cha, real smooth.
I think we're
Yeah.
I think we're gonna raid Distortion
Yeah.
Devil.
Turn it up. Yeah.
Cool.
Who is our Ainz. So make sure to go and show them a lot of love and say hi to him. He did a really good job. It's gonna be really fun. You should have heard. Well, you will hear his Ainz stuff shortly.
Stay
Until then, yeah. Oh yeah, I have to have a chat after real quick before I go to bed. So yeah, we should get to rating, and yeah, that's what it is. Well, so he's playing Elden Ring, so that's fun, and he's got some pals with him, which is cool.
Ooh.
And just make sure to give him the "Have a good dog" intro. So there we go. It looks like he's in cutscene right now. So, yeah. This is Elden Ring Night Rain, which I assume is the one that you can play co-op. Have a good one, guys. Let's show him
Yeah,
some
you
love.
too. Yep. Thanks for coming.
Later.
Bye.